The Houston Astros begin the World Series under a cloud of controversy as their assistant general manager, Brian Taubman, shouted at three female reporters, "Thank God we got Osuna. I'm so effing glad we got Osuna." Let's get right into it. Because the Houston Astros tried to gaslight the baseball world and reporters and basically put a lot of blame on one Stephanie Epstein of the Sports Illustrated for writing a true story that has been confirmed by other reporters in the room, and now the Astros even admitted that it was true. Basically a day after they said it was misleading and tried to poke holes in a story that was clearly a disturbing story from the start. So let's get into it. Roberto Osuna, again, was acquired by the Astros, but he was acquired at a time when he just started serving a 75-game suspension for violating the league's domestic violence policy. This is after he was arrested by Toronto police. At the time, he was playing with the Blue Jays, charged with assault. He allegedly assaulted Alexandra Roman Kata, the mother of his 3-year-old son. She was visiting Toronto with their child. She returned to Mexico and refused to return to Toronto. So she refused to testify, and the prosecution was withdrawn, and they signed a peace bond mandating they wouldn't see each other, or Osuna wouldn't see her for a year. So again, then he goes on administrative leave. The Astros jump in, acquire him at the low value. Again, this is incredibly, you could argue, immoral and is part of the problem in the sport and in many sports. It's not just baseball, but it's a huge problem of a very pervasive culture where behaviors are excused. Again, it's not just baseball, but it does seem to be a pervasive problem in baseball. And this response by a assistant general manager of this team, of the Astros, is incredibly disturbing. And it kind of confirms, if people were concerned when the Houston Astros acquired Osuna at a low value and said, well, why the hell are you going to get him? He just went on a 75-game suspension for allegedly assaulting the mother of his child. Why would you go get that guy? I know he's a good player, but why would you go get him now? Well, he's at a low value, and he's a great player. That was basically it for them. They had almost no other thoughts to it, it appears. But now we're seeing the assistant general manager dig in and basically finding some sort of joy in the celebration, yelling at three female reporters, one of whom it is very clear he knows of, who was wearing a purple bracelet on domestic violence. She tweeted frequently on the topic, and he had complained, the assistant general manager, Brandon Taubman, complained about her tweets, offering information on domestic violence hotlines when Osuna appeared in Astros games in 2018. That's new, and that's reported by David Folkenflick tonight. Now, what's fascinating about that is get some insight about a possible relationship between this assistant general manager and a reporter that it appears he might have targeted in his yelling of, "Thank God we got Osuna, thank effing God we have Osuna," following the Astros winning the pennant. At a time where it doesn't appear that other players are being interviewed. These are two things that are completely opposite of what the Astros' initial statement following this story, a bombshell story, was. Again, fast forward literally less than 24 hours after this. AJ Hinch, ahead of Game 1 of the World Series. He says, "I didn't know until the story came out. I'm very disappointed for a lot of reasons. It's unfortunate. It's uncalled for. For me, as a leader in this organization, I take everything that happens in the clubhouse to heart. You should never feel like you're going to be uncomfortable or disrespected." Brian Taubman, who is to assistant general manager, who denied or did not make himself available, or the PR department of the Astros did not make themselves available when Stephanie Epstein went to them first and told them this is what happened to a PR staffer. "Can I talk to Brandon Taubman to get his intentions?" As a staffer said, "Well, I don't think you should write about that because no one can know his intentions," which is why Stephanie, the reporter, had a choice. She wanted to talk to Brandon Taubman. They didn't make him available. So she says in an article by the Washington Post, she said, "The choices were to write or not to write it, and the truth is we just want to work. As reporters, we just want to do our jobs. We don't want this to be the story, but I wrote it because it's not right, and it's true, and that's our obligation to say things that are true and then peel back the curtain on attitudes that I think are pervasive in this game." So again, this is 36 hours after the incident happened. There was no apology. The team did not make him available for comment. They declined to comment. She runs a story. Then they released this statement, which I had just previously read, basically calling it misleading story, that a player was being interviewed, that the executive was supporting the person. Well, okay, throw all of that out. That was gaslighting all of us. Completely useless, because now everyone has new statements. The MLB is investigating the matter. AJ Hinch is apologizing for, which he's put in a terrible position that the organization and the general manager and Brandon Taubman himself should have been the first ones out of the gate responding to this, not declining to answer, not ejecting an interview and then waiting for a story to drop and then basically saying it's not true, it's misleading, putting the onus on the reporter who was brave in publishing this, by the way, doing something heading into the World Series like this. So now Brandon Taubman's statement, he says, I use inappropriate language for which I am deeply sorry and embarrassed. In retrospect, I realize that my comments were unprofessional and inappropriate. My overexuberance in support of a player that has been misinterpreted as a demonstration of a regressive attitude about an important social issue. Okay. Those that know me, he says, know that I am progressive. I am a progressive and charitable member of the community and a loving and committed husband and father. I hope that those who do not know me understand the Sports Illustrated article does not reflect who I am or my values. I'm deeply sorry if anyone was offended by my actions. And Jim Crane talks about how the Astros are committed to programs and raising awareness on domestic violence. The GM, Jeff Longhow, at the time sort of implied of the trade that maybe this could be a good thing, raising awareness on the issues. I mean, there's definitely awareness of the issue right now heading into the World Series, but I don't know that it's necessarily good for anyone involved, frankly. And it's deeply embarrassing and quite offensive that the Astros thought that they could sort of gaslight a story like this, that they could sort of push it by the wayside and say, oh, it's misleading. This is just a celebration and an interview. It's just supporting a player. No, it's definitely deeper than that. And reporting is suggesting, again, that the assistant general manager very well knew the reporter that he was yelling this at, that she was wearing a purple bracelet on domestic violence. And he's yelling, thank God we got Osuna. I'm so effing glad we got Osuna. Again, they have already flipped on their story. More is coming out. Now Houston Astros players will be asked about this. It will be a story. It will be a storyline. And again, this is the offensive outburst of this executive, and it is the attempted gaslighting of a team, a PR department, and a team that basically tried to smear a reporter and then completely flipped within hours. Less than a day, has now admitted wrongdoing. Now there's an investigation. Now the Baseball Writers Association of America is asking for a public apology from those involved because, again, the attempted smear of a reporter and getting out the truth. I mean, it's all despicable. And let's also be very clear. The apologies are coming now. But the reality is this assistant general manager obviously knew what he did, and the PR department had heard of this story that Stephanie had given them plenty of time to have a conversation with before she published. So they thought that either A, they wouldn't publish this, or B, even if they publish it, they could just deny it. They could gaslight people. They could say it's misleading, and they would assume that people wouldn't care. Well, they thought very, very wrong. MLB has a policy, and they went through that process. But for the Astros, you have to wonder. I mean, they decided to buy low on this guy right when this suspension started. That's alarming. This is from an organization that is now saying that they care about this issue and want to raise awareness on this issue and donate money to different organizations and causes. But they decided to make that trade to buy low on a player who just started serving a suspension for domestic violence. Now they have an assistant GM yelling at reporters, female reporters, one wearing a domestic violence band, saying how glad they are they got the guy, and then they try to gaslight reporters. Now they've flipped. Now that is alarming. Many alarming behaviors there. So my question is, who will be held accountable? If not one, how many? And for what? And how are they going to communicate that? Because they haven't done a good job communicating it so far. I hope you all enjoy Game 1 of the World Series, but I also hope the national broadcasters bring this up, because it's important and needs to be talked about, and it cannot be ignored. Thank you.